Hey guys, how are you doing? So nice to see you all. So nice to be with you once again. I'm sorry the show was a little delayed. It's okay. I needed to take care of some stuff, but I'm here now and we're going to talk about a few interesting developments in the world of horology as always. And I know El Profesor wants to get something out of his chest about our earlier conversation about the Rolex Sky Dweller as well as the Yachtmaster 2. So hopefully you'll click the link just in a matter of minutes and join the show. And it's always lovely to have him at any rate. That being said, I want to start with actually talking about this new world record, the Richard Mille Ferrari watch that just came out. And it's been only a couple of months since Bulgari Octo Finissimo Ultra has broken that record. And already we have someone else taking the torch from them, taking the mantle from them. Does this matter? And why does it matter? This is something that we will talk about. And the watch, I don't know if this was ironic, if they thought about this, if they had a sense of humor about it, but the watch is literally called RM Up 01 UP 01, as if they are fully conscious and wanted to express that they are involved in a game of one-upmanship. So there we go. Richard Mille sets a new world record for the thinnest watch with the RM UP 01 Ferrari. Mere months after Bulgari claimed the title, there's a new record holder in town. And there's the watch from a nice profile. There you see someone looking at it with fingertip gloves and loop, so you know this is serious. You know that this is groundbreaking horological development. You know, the gloves and loop convey that sense of importance. And there's the actual caliber that powers the watch. And that's very nice. Knife edge from the profile. It's apparently a manual winding, hand wound watch. And it seems that the bracelet, or the band rather, attaches pretty comfortably from it. Detaches, I should say. Big Meat says, Richard Mille, please, Richard Mille. And Jake Brooks is here as well. Hey, man. It's nice to see you. Nice to have you all in the audience. So thankfully, they have not let Bulgari hold this record for too long. The Bulgari Octo Finissimo Ultra, which was a version of their Octo Finissimo that was executed at such a level that it was only 1.80 millimeters in thickness. It also had, as you know, a barcode on the very face of the watch, on the dial, that gave you an access to a very special NFT. And there we go. Now there's a new champion in town with Richard Mille and Ferrari. that was announced today, the new standard by which razor-thin watchmaking is measured. This is now 1.75 millimeters, beating out Bulgari not by hundredth of a millimeter, but 0.05, in fact, by a walloping 0.05 millimeter. Piaget was, of course, in contention always for these sorts of watches. Bulgari had basically dedicated their entire Octofinissimo line and their pride and joy to producing thinner and thinner watches. And Richard Mille somehow came from all the way back with a movement that's itself 1.18 millimeters thick, or thin, I should say, and somehow produced this watch with a nice little Velcro strap. And as is something that we talked about before, this is a movement, of course, that comes from that boutique producer of calibers, that boutique movement maker that Audemars Piguet now owns, Repapi. Part of this development involved rethinking the escapement by building a titanium variable inertia balance wheel, which allowed for a reduction in thickness without losing any of the function and capability. Where traditional escapement contains a guard pin and safety roller to protect the lever from shock, according to RM, the new patented ultra-flat escapement eliminates both parts and situates the banking function directly to the anchor fork. The fork itself was elongated to achieve this, and its horns modified. I mean, so at one level, it's like space exploration, right? Why, you can always ask, why should it matter, right? Why are we not happy with what we have on the Earth? Why even bother to discover other planets? Why bother to get to other planets? I think sometimes certain achievements in horology are the same, whether we're talking about a specific watch or a concept. Ultimately, one hopes that the kind of mental effort, the kind of creativity and innovation and invention that is spent on clocking in these achievements somehow reflects on other aspects of horological technique, of technology that relates to watchmaking. And I guess at some point we will see the benefits of that. And it doesn't surprise me that somehow the movement, as it usually does for other Richard Mille watches, comes from Audemars Piguet's Renault et Papy workshop. Messaging Matters says, so apparently this sober horology channel becomes a wild free-for-all in the second half after those of us in later time zones have to tune out. Unfair. Does it? It's never been like that. It's never been like that. This is a very peace-loving, calm, sober, as you said, channel. And I usually mean that in various senses of the word, but I'll be drinking today at any rate, at least enjoying my little dram of scotch. But otherwise, hey, we're sober and we're fair and we're here to stay. Until Meech, oh yeah, Meech starts all the fun, man. Meech starts all the fun. But he didn't spend too much time yesterday because he had other more important matters to attend to towards the later parts of the night. George Varghese, welcome to the channel. Good evening. Richard Mille is a master of invention. Think about Nadal playing tennis, Watson hitting a golf ball. The watches never lose a beat. This is more innovation from a great brand. Yes, I mean, as long as we recognize, George, of course, brands matter. Of course, proper names matter in the world of watches. But as I've mentioned, and as this Hodinky article written by one Danny Milton recognizes, the movements almost always come from Audemars Piguet's Renaud et Papy workshop. So that's really where the invention lies. But hey, someone has to enable it, someone has to fund it, someone has to push the buttons, someone has to write the checks, someone has to trigger it. And in this case, it's Richard Mille. So you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I don't, it might sound like it sometimes when I speak about Richard Mille watches in this channel, that I have some sort of case against the entire brand. I really don't. I really don't. I just don't get uh, the entire hype around it. Other than that, I don't have a problem with Richard Mille. And in this case, I actually I kind of like this. I kind of like this. Independent of the price tag, which we will come to again. Um, I guess whether this is literally a concept watch or not, whether it's wearable or not, and it turns out it is, because I'm going to show you a wrist shot from Roberta Nas, a timely perspective, someone who prides herself as the first woman watch journalist in the U.S., and rightly so, because she really is. And she has a wrist shot of this. So let's have a little look at that first. And I mean, it looks kind of wearable, not necessarily maybe as a timepiece, because I have no idea what's going on. But practically, you get to basically um, switch between functions. I'm assuming with those little selectors. I think one allows you to wind, one allows you to change minutes, and again, same with this one allows you to change the hour hand. One allows you to wind. There must be some sort of implement, of course, that helps you manipulate those screws there. But hey, this is not a bad aesthetic, honestly. Again, without necessarily thinking of it in the most conventional way as a wristwatch. I mean, it does remind me of how sponsorships work in Formula One, right? Since drivers are no longer allowed to wear watches while they're in their cars. As you know, the silhouettes of the watches are basically drawn on their racing suit. So this kind of looks like that, and it's really barely much thicker than something you would apply through other methods. Thomas Broadbent says Richard Mille not buying it. And George Varghese says, have you ever tried on a Richard Mille? I have not, actually, George. I don't think I would have, with all the connections I have, I don't think I would still have permission to enter the Richard Mille boutique in Beverly Hills, much less being allowed to try on their watches. I've heard so many stories of high-level executives from other brands being turned back at their door because they didn't go with prior knowledge of the boutique, and they just tried to enter. And since they weren't recognized, and why should anyone recognize middle or even higher management in a watch company at another watch boutique? It's not like, Mr. Jonathan Lobb actually walking into a John Lobb shoe store when of course the ready-to-wear brand is actually a branch of Hermes and no longer operated by the family. I mean, they would recognize him, I guess, but hey. Thomas says the emperor has no clothes. Okay. And JB says trading 0.01% of size for 99% of the style versus the Ultra. Okay, let's bring up the Ultra too, because I mean, I like the Octo Finissimo as a design. I love how that watch actually sits on the wrist. So I guess I kind of like the Ultra as well, although I don't think that's the best execution of that idea, of that concept, of that watch shape. Nevertheless, I think it's a little more aesthetically pleasing than this, but that's just a personal opinion. George Varghese says, in my humble opinion, Richard Mille doesn't care if they sell one of these watches. It's almost $2 million. I think they would care if they sold. $2 million is, even for Richard Mille, that's a good chunk of cash. It's all about the hype and publicity. There we agree, because I've made this argument, George, about Bulgari before. Bulgari is still to this day having a hard time being recognized as a serious watchmaker, right? Watches is not the first thing that one thinks of when you mention the name Bulgari. Jewelry comes to mind. If you are really into it, maybe you might think of their, very precious sevenfold handmade ties. But then again, in year 2022, there's so many others that make that and that provide those sorts of Italian ties globally. So they're not that unique anymore. But you wouldn't think of watches. And all they did in the last, 7-8 years, let's say, was to focus on breaking world records and producing the kind of watches that would attract just a little bit of attention so that they can turn some heads and have at least some people recognize them as a watchmaker with a certain cachet. And this is exactly what RM is doing here as well. George Varghese says, when I think of Richard Mille, I think of innovation, pardon me, and exclusivity. I agree. It's like a calling card. It's like a membership card of a very exclusive club. I agree with that. Richard Mille will challenge Patek Philippe as the greatest watchmaker as the years go by. Wow, that's a strong statement. Mark this post. Hey, George, I hope we will stay friends for that long. I hope we will live long enough to see that sort of sea change, because that's a very huge claim. But I'm not going to deny you that. I'm not going to contest it. Like you said, let's mark it, shelf it, and think about it. And Messaging Matters is definitely going to show up in a future Marvel movie. And Thomas says it looks like a crushed beer can. That was harsh. I can see what you mean. Grade 5 titanium. So at this level, where certain parts of the movement is also in titanium, at this thickness, 1.75 millimeters, it must feel like nothing at all on the wrist. Considering how even the standard models of Octofinissimo, for example, that are under 7 millimeters, or the titanium version, which is under 6 millimeters, that they feel like nothing on the wrist. So I can't even imagine how this would feel like. This is of the previous 80 sandblasted titanium. And this has that sort of recognizable feel, like a skeletonized dial in a sense, regulator watch kind of configuration, right, where you have hour hand in a separate dial and the minute hand in yet another dial. I've done a little video, by the way, about regulator watches and how they have popular. We'll pull that up just to share the link. And I think it's an interesting concept. But again, we were just talking about whether the watch is recognizable as a wristwatch. I think the Ultra is. Octofinissimo Ultra in some way can be understood, can be recognized as a watch. Can't quite say the same thing about this aim of one-upmanship. Oh, the professor is here now. Okay, good. I just posted the link to my regulator watch video, guys, so check that out at some other time. Professor, I can't see you, but I can hear you. How are you doing?
Oh, hello, everyone.
Hey.
How are things? How was your July 4th?
It was good. I was here. I stayed home. It's yeah, nothing special at all. So just to get this out of the way, in general, I don't know if you have heard about Richard Mille news today. They have produced a watch that's only 1.75 millimeters thick. So they have stolen the record from this piece, Bulgari Octo Finissimo Ultra. What do you think of that sort of horological arms race? Does it mean anything to you? Do you think it's worth to follow, to think about at all?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Well, it does, of course, because it advances the world of watches. Although the brand itself is quite unattainable for most people, it does advance watchmaking, and I think this is a good thing. Yeah. Now, is it a beautiful watch? I am looking at it with you. Is this the one that they produced? The one you're showing right now?
This is the Richard Mille.
Yeah, I would never wear this watch even if I had the money. It looks utterly ugly.
Which is $2 million, by the way. So it's nothing to sneeze at. Yeah.
Yes, well, of course, I'll be sneezing many times and I'll still not get 2 million. But I mean, it is a rather very ugly watch. I mean, it's like a frying pan. You know.
Honestly, that's what I thought at first look, but then again, with all due respect, I'm just trying to be nice a little bit. I changed my perspective and stopped thinking of this as a watch, just as another accessory. And Roberta Nas kind of helped me do that, putting it right next to her beautiful pearl uh, bracelets there. So it's like, if you think of it as a futuristic uh, piece of jewelry that sits on your wrist, maybe you can have a different conversation. But yes, so on the one hand, as a concept, like you said, Al Professor, it has some value, some horological value, because it's at the very least, it's a demonstration of horological and technological expertise, mainly by APRP, Audemars Piguet, Renault et Papy. Or you can think of it again as some sort of futuristic uh, device that just we have to kind of reorganize and rewire our brain and not look at it as a watch, as a wristwatch. But you're right. I mean, it's aesthetically, it's not my taste, that's for sure. What's the significance of the Ferrari partnership? I have no clue. I have no clue, actually, what the relationship between Richard Mille and Ferrari is.
Well, always Richard Mille had a relationship with F1 and in general
Mhm.
auto racing, because that's where he got a lot of his inspiration. And probably there is a partnership, so he has um, his brand appears on the F1 race car itself. I'm not sure. Um, I mean, there are other
Okay.
brands that
Okay.
do
Yeah.
that.
They are, apparently they are sponsoring Scuderia Ferrari. They are
Yeah,
sponsoring the F1 team.
yeah, yeah.
There we go.
But
Let me pull up.
Lord, this watch, you cannot wear it a lot. I mean, the Bulgari, you can wear it. It's a daily wear. I would wear it. With this one, it's a difficult wear. I mean, it is an accessory, as you say, but it's a difficult accessory.
Sure. Yeah, look, I mean, it brings some attention to Ferrari as well, just as Carlos Sainz won his first race, I think, in Silverstone. I don't think he had won before, um, and it's good timing for that, and it's good publicity. I can't say much more than that, but I did want to talk to you about your take on the Sky Dweller and Yachtmaster 2, which you have already promised me well in advance. GB Vol is here. Welcome to the channel, man. And Big George, New York. It says it looks like a belt buckle. The Octo Finissimo Ultra, very much like the professor has said, looks more like a watch. Welcome back, man. Nice to see you. So
Yeah.
you had something to contribute to this discussion about the Sky Dweller and the Yachtmaster too, and looking at them as complicated watches specifically. Oh, that's pregnant pause again. Just technical difficulties, I'm assuming.
Yes, yes. Sorry, it's always the internet is not so advanced where I am. Yes, I was listening to the program, to the show, and I heard what was said yesterday concerning the Sky Dweller, the Yacht Master 2, and all of that.
Hmm.
So I do believe that both of them are um, esteemed complications by Rolex, whatever that means. It means, typically Rolex is not known for their complications. Um, However, the Yachtmaster was the most complicated watch when it came out, sometime in the late 2000s, right? 2008, was it, Lord, or 2007? I forget which one was which. Um, and at that time, it was the most complicated Rolex. The Sky
Bobby
Dweller,
Bobby Google says unveiled in 2007, first introduced in 2010. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's what it says.
yeah, I don't know if it was 2010, but it was somewhere there, 07, 08. Of course, they came out with the all gold version, the white and the yellow.
Mhm.
And then I think by 2012, they came out with a stainless steel, the blue bezeled one. It was a complication, definitely. Not a loved watch by the public. It actually, I think the gold versions, white and yellow, sold more watches than the steel version throughout the whatever 12 plus years since its inception or market inception and presentation.
It kind of makes sense to me, if you know what I mean, because it's a big watch, it's a loud watch, and I think that kind of speaks to the personality who would want it in precious metal, especially in yellow gold. Again,
Yeah,
judgment
yeah,
free. I think it makes
yeah,
sense that this watch would have sold much more in yellow gold than steel. But yeah,
yeah,
please
exactly.
please go on.
And nobody understood the complication except maybe the engineers who made the complication.
Mm,
But you never, the people who I know who own the watch do not wear it because they understand the complication. Most people don't understand complications, but they wore it exactly because of what you said, because it has a wrist presence. It's a big watch, and it says, look, I can afford whatever in yellow gold or in white gold, and it was quite popular in white gold during
mhm.
the first 5 to 7 years when it came out. The Sky Dweller, I think it's I sit on this debate on the following kind of concept. I sit on the side that says the Sky Dweller is a bigger innovation in terms of watchmaking more than the Yachtmaster. Now, whether it has 380 parts, the Yachtmaster, the Sky Dweller, and the Yachtmaster 2 has 360, and the Sky Dweller makes it therefore a more complicated watch. It's kind of a two engineering issue, but we shouldn't look at the Sky Dweller as equal to, let's say, a chronograph. A
Mhm.
chronograph is a complication. Um, an annual calendar is easy to produce, and who cares about the month and the second GMT or the GMT function. It is a more complicated watch to produce, and it is more complicated to produce in a smaller case than the Yachtmaster 2. The Yachtmaster is a 44 millimeter case, and bigger watches can have and afford bigger complications. So making it in a 42 case is also a task. It's not easy to produce it. Now, is it big? Is it for everybody? Of course not. It's not for everybody. It's a thicker watch. It has a bigger wrist presence. But it is a watch with several complications, which I think Rolex um, wants to be known for. And it's a cheaper version than the annual calendar when you go to Patek.
Well, going back to that idea though, that you presented. At the end of the day, most people wear these watches, whether we are talking about Yachtmaster 2, the Sky Dweller, or even Patek annual calendar or Patek perpetual calendar, chrono. People wear these watches because of a certain emotional attachment and aesthetic appreciation that they have for it, right? No one really reads off the month from the dial of their watch, right? People might use the
Yeah.
date complication in this sort of daily way, we usually say signing the date. Hey, I have a watch with a date indicator and I can actually double check. This is all fine, but when it comes to genuinely complicated watches, which actually is a very basic definition, right? The FHH definition is Fondation de la Haute Horlogerie. They simply say any function other than the indication of hours, minutes, and seconds, right? So anything is basically a complication. The date is a complication, and yeah, at the end of the day, I think it boils down to an aesthetics, and that's the reason I do understand people's issue with it, because there's nothing objective about that, of course, but people are attached to the expression of the annual calendar with a, say, moon phase, whereas Sky Dweller's demonstration, Sky Dweller's expression of the annual calendar function, and let's pull it up, is very different than the traditional
No, for sure. I think it is. And that's why it
one.
stands out.
Uh,
I think that's why it stands out. But, having said that, the Sky Dweller, no, look, a lot of these watches are appreciated because of either their rarity or because of the trend. And the Sky Dweller became a desired watch, especially the blue dial, because it was at a premium. You couldn't get
mhm.
it, and it has certain functions that people think they need, although in reality, yes, I agree, you don't need the month function to understand, where you are in the planet of things. But it is a complication. Is it an aesthetically pleasant watch? I mean, I have worn the Sky Dweller, and it is a rather big watch, but one can say equally the same about,
Mm.
the Explorer 2, the new 42 millimeter case. It is a rather big watch
Mhm.
with a big presence. Um, and it depends on where you want to lie on this debate. I mean, the Yachtmaster is a big watch, so you're not going to go unnoticed
Mhm.
in your area wearing one. Um,
Yeah, I mean, look, I like the Sky Dweller. Not a huge fan of the Outmaster 2 at all. I can appreciate that it's a complicated watch, but at the end of the day, not only do I have no use for the complication in my life, I also think it looks monstrous. When it comes to the Sky Dweller, I think in certain configurations I actually like it. Um, Probably not a great fit for my wrist, but this looks good on the big boy. I think it looks good on the Almighty Pontiff. I think this is a good one. The white dial, I especially like it because, again, being a complicated watch and being a rather odd expression of the annual calendar complication, the smoothness and the plainness of the white dial takes it a few notches down, and it becomes somehow more bearable for me. And I actually do like how it expresses the month. That red indicator, basically, that aligns with the hour indicators, which again, if you're a huge Rolex fanboy like me, you would say it's ingenious. If not, you'll just say, you'll just turn your nose up and say, well, what is that? I don't care for it. Anyway, so yeah, not my favorite kind of annual calendar, honestly, but I can see how this watch has an appeal. Whereas, yeah, I have really no patience for the Yachtmaster, but then who cares, right? You don't like a watch, you just disregard it. You don't buy it, you don't patronize it, and that's it. Cheers.
I agree. I agree. I think it's look, if we can accept that a chronograph, like the Daytona, has no date function, but it is feasible and it's rather easy, one should not criticize the fact that Rolex has produced a Sky Dweller with these complications. Now, whether it's aesthetically beautiful or not, this is a question for the beholder of the watch, and there is a bit of getting to adjust our tastes and preferences to
What is
marketing.
the professor eating?
The professor is eating an omelette because he has to board the plane in a couple of hours to move back to the old country from where I am now. So I have to go back to my tent in the UK.
Well, I mean, technically, Greece is the older country, isn't it?
Yes, of course, yeah, by a couple of 1,000 years, if not more. But no, for you guys sitting in the US, the old country, meaning that because you're also a New England man, so I'm
That's
going
right.
to the old England.
Yeah. By the way, guys, that's also the obnoxious name of my Instagram account, which you should follow. Old New England. I've just posted quick little Chuck Yeager GMT Master watch that was actually released in a limited edition of 50 by a Japanese company with aftermarket modifications and everything. You can check out the post there, or you can watch my video tomorrow, which I will broadcast relatively earlier in the day, much earlier than this live stream, at least.
If if you allow me, Lord, if I can excuse myself, and then I can rejoin in about 20 minutes.
Okay. Do you want me to just put you in the background so you can just give me a hint? And
yes, that will be great. That will be wonderful.
Right.
Thank you very much, and I apologize to everyone.
Bon appetit.
Thank you.
Enjoy, please. Right. It was nice to have the professor there, and I wanted to keep him in the background because at least I can see him enjoying the food and can enjoy it vicariously in that little screen below. Thomas Broadbent said, Rolex can even make the Sky Dweller better. It fits me great. I preferred the cream with Roman numerals. They used to have versions of it with Roman numerals, and I think even did they have some other kinds? But they removed the Roman numerals, I think, with the recognition that it's there's just too much going on the dial. And again, with of course, I think Roman numerals on a dress watch usually is very desirable. I can understand why one would want to go for it, and they're still available out there in the secondary market. I'm sure you can strike a deal on one. But they removed it with a very specific reason, which Rolex usually has when they do these things, when they take these decisions, even though those reasons might not be justifiable, comprehensible, or even respectable to us. But they always have a reason behind it. They usually don't do things willy-nilly. Smooth bezel would be better. I mean, from my understanding, the fact that that is a command bezel, that it allows you to cycle through the different functions for whatever reason. Well, I mean, for reasons of grip to begin with, it doesn't allow for the smooth bezel. That's what I'm given to understand constantly. Um, but they could probably come up with something that's not the fluted bezel and that still has some kind of a grip. But ultimately, being this belonging to the family of Datejust, Day Date, um, so on and so forth, rather than the professional line, I think it only makes sense to preserve that aesthetic of the fluted bezel rather than some sort of other or sportier rotational bezel like that of the Submariner or the Yachtmaster. Thomas says, and we can direct this question back to El Professor in a second. 50 years ago, Nixon shock global economy then and now. Who is the George Shultz figure today? We can ask this question to him. Oh, FFM is Frank Mille. Okay. All right. All right. I just didn't get it immediately as a reference. FFM. All right. I'll be better next time, George. When you refer to FM, I'll know exactly what you're talking about. So that was our short conversation about the Yachtmaster 2 and Sky Dweller, which are the two watches in the Rolex lineup that compete for the dubious honor of being the most complicated in the Rolex lineup. To me, does it matter for a Rolex to be complicated? I don't think so. That's not how I look at Rolex by and large. That's not how I look at my Rolex watches. I usually go for them for their robustness, their reliability, the aesthetic that I've grown up with and that I've grown with, and ultimately also in a way for their utility, in the sense that they have a heritage, right? This may not be the case. This may no longer be the case, especially for a lot of the older models that I own, but they have that provenance of having been tool watches at a certain point. So for me, a complicated Rolex is not necessarily a terms, but it's not the first thing that I look for. It's not the first thing that comes to my mind when I look for a Rolex watch. But I guess, they need to have something in their lineup, right, that expresses that level of horological commitment, at least. That's why I think of all Cellini watches, which were their exclusive dress watch category, they eliminated everything but the Cellini with the moon face, right? And in the same way, I think, it makes sense that Rolex would have at least a couple of watches like the Sky Dweller, like the Yachtmaster 2, that express something more than a three-hander with dates, or four-hander, which is what a GMT watch is. So hours, minutes, seconds, jumping hour hand for either 24 hours, or to express a second to indicate time in another time zone. I guess it only makes sense that they would try to do something more than that. And this ties us back to our earlier discussion about what brands like Richard Mille and Bulgari are doing, right? These watchmakers are not just producing complications or producing watches that break the record for being the thinnest watch in the world today, not only for the sake of that particular innovation, but also in a way to assert themselves in the horological map. So clearly, Rolex felt like that they need to have an annual calendar in their lineup um, to compete with the big three, so to speak, right? Those three brands that are more easily recognized as part of being the high horological, quote unquote, holy trinity: Patek Philippe, Vacheron Constantin, and Audemars Piguet. Thomas Broadman says, I read that as cheese, because the other thing that came to my mind, Thomas, when I was looking at the Richard Mille Ultra Thin, was a little cheese grater. So I thought you were saying I can't wait for the RM Ultra Thin cheese grater. That could be a nice invention for them. Um, nothing horological, of course, but a nice culinary contribution by Richard Mille, like a handheld, wrist-worn cheese grater in manageable dimensions, the world's thinnest cheese grater that you can wear on your wrist. I think that could be brilliant, marketing genius for many different watchmakers. Archive of Sorts, welcome back to the channel. Why are Richard Mille so expensive in general? I don't get it. They mostly make me puke. Well, I mean, see, it helps you keep the weight off. It helps you refresh. It helps you um, throw up your toxicity, get rid of the toxicity in your body. That's why they are. Now, ultimately, I think George came up with the best summary of Richard Mille as a brand. He says, when I think of Richard Mille, I think of innovation and exclusivity, right? So it's a lot of times it's exclusivity for exclusivity's sake, right? To make sure that these watches are exclusive. Obviously, you have to make them as expensive as possible. That's one surefire way of making a watch exclusive, make it unobtainable for most. Thomas Broadbent says the fabulous Italian designer of the Octo will kick Richard Mille ass and claim number one again. Time will tell. Time will tell. And before Bulgari, it was Piaget, after all. So it's not like one brand gets to enjoy that honor for much too long. An Archive of Sorts says, I'm not remotely toxic. Well, because you get to throw it up once every so often and refresh. That's why. And you got the Richard Mille watches to thank for that. But honestly, guys, I'm not, I tried to come up with some nasty and vicious stuff, like likening it to a handheld wrist-worn cheese grater, and I guess it makes sense. But ultimately, really, I'm not as revolted as you might think. I think this is an interesting contraption. I don't think it looks that outrageous on the wrist, actually. Especially the Ferrari link again makes me think of those watches that are drawn on the driver's racing suits because they can't wear a real watch to drive. race. So it, in a way, this just looks like a futuristic accessory or a piece of jewelry rather than a timepiece to me. But it can actually also tell time, right? I know Eric Wind had in his inventory very recently a piece. Let me see. That was a ring. It was a ring watch. Oh, there we go. It's Universal Genève ring watch, right? Imagine, I mean, someone is wearing it on their pinky. So imagine how small this is, but I can't deny that it's a beautiful piece of design. I don't know if it is the octagon uh, that charms me. I don't know if it's the size or if it is that particular uh, deep deep dark blue color to which the dial has aged. I don't exactly know, but there's something very charming about this. And it's kind of, that's what it reminds me. That's what the RMUP01 reminds me of. It is just an interesting contraption that represents a horological achievement. And, you know, we are happy to have it out there in the world. Most of us won't even get near it, but hey, there's nothing wrong with its existence. Marky Mark. Hey man, how are you doing, Mark?
I'm good. I'm just saying that those Richard meals, they all look like they were designed from leftover parts from Wall-E from Pixar.
Is that why you chose that avatar? I usually liken them to, you know, to toy watches that come out of like a cornflakes box or something, some sort of
They
cereal.
look like they were made out of like the handle to hold your microphone, man. Like it's not even funny. They, I look. I'm not gonna mess about for anybody who's listening. I don't know much about watches, but one thing I do know is that for some reason, to my eye, they look they almost look like they're fake watches without being fake. If that makes
Without
sense.
being, it makes sense because without being fake is actually, I think, a good way to put it because, you know, sometimes people say this to undermine Richard Mille, but whenever I point out that the movements inside them come from Audemars Piguet's workshop, which is Renaud Papy, and Renaud Papy is basically the little laboratory that produced so many of these innovative watchmakers that reign today. So it's, you know, the movements inside them are certainly always um, respectable, if not quite brilliant. So there's no doubting their horological value. Whether they justify that particular price point is actually, like George was putting, it's quite clear. They're supposed to be exclusive. So, you know, obviously none of these costs, I'm not talking about the ultra thin, ultra flat watch, but they're, you know, they're standard fare of chronographs with that particular tonneau case shape, just in a retro futuristic
But but
execution. Those don't cost you know, $250,000 to make, but they will cost 300, 400,000 to own because they're supposed to belong on the wrists of very affluent people. It's just a signal. It's a club card. It
I
is what
I,
it is.
under, I understand that. But like, let's just talk. Let's just let me just ask like a question that's probably booming in the room that nobody wants to ask. If they were the same price as Rolex, would they be as hard to get as a Rolex? Probably not.
Um, it depends. If they started there, that would be another question. But if they are suddenly marketed at that price range, believe me, they will be even harder to get at that price range, or even at Patek Philippe price range, they would be impossible to get, because now they have already established themselves at such a higher market placement. But think of it like this, Mark. I'll give you the example. I'll give you the example of a brand of whiskey that you like so much, because it's connected to, again, someone you connect so much with, which is Proper 12, right? If Proper 12 was priced right to where it belongs, would it actually be the brand that someone else bought from McGregor?
Probably not.
That's it. So pricing is marketing placement.
Fair.
That's it. There's nothing
Can-
more complicated than that. And I'm not trying to pun, because we were talking about complicated watches at some
Yeah.
level. There's
Can
nothing
you
more complicated than that. It's just marketing placement.
Can you do me a favor though? Just please
Of
do me a
course.
favor. Can you please specify that you said that I like Proper 12 in jest and it wasn't serious?
Yes, I was just joking, of course. But I don't have the best sense of humor. I'm trying. I'm making an effort. I was joking, of course.
That was actually the most insulting thing you've ever said to me.
Exactly.
You said some very, very insulting things. That's actually the
I
most.
don't know what you're talking about, but yes, that
Oh.
was very insulting what I just said. But it
Yeah.
was just a joke.
How did they start at such a high price point?
Ooh,
How do you
well,
start at such a high price point? Oh, here you go. Here's an exclusive club members card. Oh, by the way, we're gonna make you a futuristic Hublot.
I don't know. Actually, that you have to ask to someone who has followed the brand for a little bit more passion than I have. If George is still in the chat, I think that would be a good person to ask that. I don't know. Honestly, I think Richard Mille was already a very well respected watchmaker, but that question that just begs you.
Sorry, I think maybe I was cutting out.
No, so I think it was my connection.
Oh,
Because sure. See, okay. Hey, Wikipedia can help us sometimes, so let's pull it up. Bobby Google. There's nothing wrong with Bobby Google. So it was a brand established by Dominique Guénat and Richard Mille. Ultra hand high luxury. Okay, Richard
but the
Mille
only
left.
thing luxurious about those watches is the movement and like the exclusivity. The watches themselves don't look luxurious.
No, I mean that's debatable. What looks luxurious, honestly? I mean, it's that's a whole can of worms that we would need to get into, because that's a category that doesn't only include watches, and there are a lot of luxury goods that I don't understand. So
Yeah,
I'm not
every
gonna
Gucci
say
handbag.
right. Yeah, so I can't tell you whether RM looks luxurious or not. It must, because a lot of people pay so much money for it as an ultra luxury good. So at some level, it must look like a luxury product in a way I can't recognize myself. I will give it that much credit. Yeah, so basically, Richard Mille was already an established watchmaker. He left his position from Mobusson, and just established a firm with his partner, Dominique Guéna, or Géna, um, and they went into a partnership with Audemars Piguet Renault Papy, which is that caliber producing, movement making workshop that I talked about. And then things took off at a certain point. I don't know how, I don't know why. Professor was eating his breakfast, Steve. I hope he will come back eventually. Okay, so there's one. Mark Omega has an interesting question. Is it a luxury watch, a practical one, or an FU one?
Those watches are fuck you money.
And GB Vol says Richard Mille brand got a boost when one was born on Baba Watson's wrist when he won the Masters in 2012. That's one moment. The other thing is, of course, their sponsorship of Rafael Nadal as well, who plays with them, which is, again, I think an interesting way to market them, and certainly gives them a certain cachet. That came up in our discussion, both Watson and Nadal earlier.
I'll say one thing. He was wearing a Richard Mille on the day when he won the Masters. That watch is a miracle worker, because that man can't put word to shit.
Jesus.
I'm sorry. You can kick me off at any time, because you know what type of comments I'll make.
All of them are welcome. You know the lines anyway, so it's not anything else as obnoxious as it gets.
Lines are only put there to be crossed.
Well,
you live in a country with plenty of lines being crossed.
Yeah, so Tony Robbins frequently wears that model too, the Baba Watson. And Benny B says, was working earlier, so couldn't join. Hey, but a friend who was at the launch made a point. This is also what's possible and what RM can achieve. That's more than fair, right? At some level, it's really flexing, not at the level of people who own the watch, but at the level of the brand identity, right? It's a certain kind of flexing. Hey, this is what we can do. This is what we can achieve. We outdid Bulgari. We outdid Piaget. We outdid everyone else, and we have the thinnest watch in the world. And again, think of the ideology, right? We usually associate thinness with dress watches, not really sports watches, which is very much the core of Richard Mille identity, because they have been, since the beginning, very religious about putting their watches on athletes' wrists, especially athletes who wear them during competition. So for them to produce an ultra thin watch, which is generally, again, a category that's associated with dressier pieces, I think it's an interesting flex, and I can recognize it. And Benny B, thanks for underlining that. GB Vol says it was all over. Baba Watson's watch was all over talk radio in 2012 after the Masters. His $5,000 watch. $500,000 watch. And Benny B says, sorry, RM made a point at the launch. Yes, this is what is possible and what we can achieve. Fair point. I think that's a good point. What this means is that Richard Mille can achieve this, and it's perhaps a look at their future models. Okay. Yeah. Again, if you can combine this sort of flex with also tip towards a future direction that's even better. It's perhaps a look at their future models, much like the Audemars Piguet concept that then brought on a whole design language. Perhaps Richard Mille are doing the same. And again, Richard Mille has a very recognizable design language, very recognizable case shapes, right? Let's look at the, for the Richard Mille watches that the Ferrari F1 team actually wears, because I think they're a good execution of that aesthetic. Um, right, the traditional tonneau case shape, skeletonized dials often, chronographs often, right? And that sort of retrofuturistic design language that will always remain, I'm sure, part of the brand's aesthetic. Rubber bands, of course, or bands of less conventional material. Yeah, maybe they will increasingly produce thinner watches.
Eventually, you'll have a condom on your wrist.
I mean, we started.
You're talking about rubber bands. I mean,
we
the
started
thinner.
wearing masks on the street, so why not? Condoms on the wrist may well be the next step. Bike racer Julien Alaphilippe also conspicuously wears Richard Mille, and he's a huge star in France and elsewhere. Thomas asked, "Is Mobusson still in existence?" I think they are. That's and I think they should still have a place in Place Vendôme, among others.
What the hell is that on the screen?
That is a Kimi. That's an RM50-04 Kimi.
So
That's
this
a
is
Ferrari.
so it's made to look like the inside of the engine on a Ferrari.
That's one interpretation of it. It's like abstract art, man. You can see whatever you want to see in it.
I see a jukebox.
Good to see you. Good to see you, says. Welcome to the channel, by the way. While it's not my taste, I get it. Great. I actually, I mean, I'm on that same page. Good to see you. Many of today's iconic watches debuted to heavy criticism, or at least that's what they keep saying about the code 1159. Yeah, I mean, look, correlation doesn't mean causation, right? If you know your science 101, just because iconic models were criticized when they were introduced doesn't mean that every model that gets criticized at launch will become a future icon. And I'm sure the outgoing Audemars Piguet CEO might not wrap around his head that example that I just gave, but I'm sure my audience is smart enough that they could. RJ says Charles Leclerc of the Ferrari team wears the RM6702. Let's check that out. 6702. That is an extra flat watch, apparently. So yeah, it makes some sense. I mean, look, again, when I look at these not as watches that I'm used to, but as something different, I can appreciate the aesthetic, honestly. I'm not a hater, guys. I like this. But even at the price that Mark suggested, if they were at the price at the level of Rolex, I don't think I would be interested in this. This is not my taste.
It looks like something I would pick up in a little corner store that has the little plastic boxes of watches that you get a kid for like $15.
Yeah. Mm,
That's what it looks
mhm.
like to me. But my eye ain't sophisticated.
I mean, my eye isn't that sophisticated to see anything beyond. I did say earlier, like, it feels like it fell out of the cereal box. But again, I can appreciate it as a luxury object, but that's not what I look for in a watch. But then again, not everything has to cater to my taste. Jake Brooks says the RM hustle is that you can't buy a retail version without buying two plus, more than two pre-owned at market price, sold from their own pre-owned boutique. I didn't even know that. But that's the plot thickens. So it's even the fact that they traffic in their pre-owned pieces that are priced above retail. That's even more delicious. Yeah, I have a newfound love for their
That's so
marketing
funny to
genius.
me. That's so funny to me. That just means like they gave these to celebs. The celebs didn't like them, gave them back. Oh, it's pre-owned. We're going to sell them at cheaper, a little bit cheaper. Sell to a woman here. Now you can get your own new one, all for a watch that wasn't even wanted in the first place.
Mm. All right. Well, since we love Richard Mille watches so much, and we seem to be basically going around the circle a little bit, Mark, maybe we can have a little interval with boxing for a little bit. Are
I
there?
don't even have a boxing channel anymore, dude.
You don't? What happened?
No, I deleted it.
You deleted your channel?
Yeah.
Okay. Forget about the channel shit. You're a boxing fan.
No, no, I'm not. I'm not. You need to have a channel to be a boxing fan.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I will take myself out of that equation too, because I talk boxing, but I don't know shit about boxing. One and two, this is not a boxing channel, so I guess I don't cut mustard either.
What do you want to talk about?
I don't know. Were there any fights that you were looking at? You were
Um,
expecting?
oh, that's hard to answer. Um, I liked Jesse Rodriguez. He looked special.
Bam,
Bam, he looked
bam.
special. Yeah, he was 2 years ago. He was my prospect of the year when nobody was calling him the prospect of the year, and I feel how do I word it? Happy. Feel happy because I called it right for once. 9 times out of 10 with these prospects, like it kind of goes like Bektamir Melikuziev. He gets knocked the
Oh,
fuck out by Gabe Rosado. But every once in a while, I get Jesse Rodriguez. But to be fair, that's not really down to me. That's just down to watching a lot of different fights and lower, more obscure undercards. So once you see a real talent, you can kind of pick them up.
right.
So
And at some level too, I mean, look, I'm not gonna get into the whole waxing poetic about boxing is just like life, but it does matter the kind of paths that these fighters take, and sometimes their careers get derailed by something, and they have a completely different fate, and you would never know how things would have played out if it went their way. And I'm not saying this to make excuses for Bektemir Melikuziev, but like he had that Kovalev fight lined up, right? And we know how spent and how completely done Kovalev has been for so long, but especially at that point.
right.
So if Kovalev didn't test positive, and if he had that fight and knocked out Kovalev, if Beck, the bully, knocked out Kovalev in that fight, he would have been on a different path. Now, maybe he would have still been found out and exposed by someone, but at least not to, with all due respect to Gabe Rosado, by the way. I actually respect him as a fighter, but people misunderstand this term sometimes. He's a journeyman, right? He is the kind of fighter who puts upcoming prospects to test to see if they can actually pass that sort of trial. And if Beck had already knocked out Kovalev, he wouldn't have needed that test. So he could have moved on to something bigger and better. And it's a little sad, but he will probably.
Well, where do you go after? Look, if he beats Kovalev, it means he's campaigning at light heavy. Where do you go? Beterbiev?
No, he wasn't gonna go anywhere. I mean, look,
They were trying to fast track him. I mean, that's why they had Kovalev there. I mean, Kovalev just won a cruiser. Their backup choice was Gabe Rosado at 168, and Gabe was coming off of a fight at 168 where he should have had a victory over Danny Jacobs. And
exactly.
the thing about Gabe is he's unbeaten at 168 pounds. Like, we can call him a journeyman all we want, but no, he lost Jacobs on the cards, but he won that fight. He won that.
Hey, Nicholas. Hey, welcome to the channel, man.
I feel very sorry for Gabe because he has a lot of robberies on his record against him as well.
Right.
Not only that, like, I do feel he's a big guy who's been drained in weight just to get the fights. Like you say, path is one thing, but who's guiding you down that path is another. So I feel like when it comes to it, like picking a promoter is like picking a religion. You don't all get into heaven, right?
That's a good way to put it.
I thought so.
What do you think? What do you think about Bam Rodriguez's future prospects? Do you think they should keep him at Superfly since he has already dethroned two of the kings, or should he really drop down to 112 as he has been saying?
Look, I see a lot of fans saying stuff like, "Oh, let's get this kid in there with Chocolatito," because that's fan excitement. But the reality of it is we don't know what Rungvisai had left or what Quadras had left in the tank. They're at the latter stage of their career. We know Chocolatito is still a gem. He just destroyed Martinez. Absolutely destroyed him. Should have had a victory over Estrada. People might be jumping the gun on that one. The kid did actually struggle a bit with a faded Quadras. Just because he looked spectacular against a Rungvisai who hasn't looked good since his first win over Estrada, he hasn't actually looked any good. People could be over jumping the gun there. I would say it's a smart move to bring him back down to 112. Gaining more experience, different styles also, because there are other styles that he can face down there with Junto Nakatani, Sonny Edwards, Dalakian, and Martinez himself. He can get very good experience, and if he comes through that division, he can go back up, and he doesn't need to ever face Chocolatito or Estrada. I know people will look at it as like, oh, a fight loss and put that blemish on him. Let's say he gets the pound for pound status one day. People do that with a new way. They say, oh, him and Chocolatito should have fought, but they ignore like the balance of the careers at the time. They don't pay attention.
And also, it wasn't, honestly, if people really want to go in there, it wasn't really Inoue's fault that fight didn't materialize, because Chocolatito's own path was derailed by what was a close fight, was scored for Rungvisai. I'm a huge Chocolatito fanboy, so I thought he won, and it was pretty clear to me. Anyway, the second fight happened, and he was knocked out cold. So there's no argument to make there. And two losses back to back, even for the same person, could have ended anyone else's career, but Chocolatito picked himself up, dusted off his shoulders and just went about business as he does. By the way, guys, for those of you who may not be boxing fans, boxing aficionados in the audience, Bam Rodriguez fights at 115, the super flyweight division, which might fall off the radar, but is actually one of the most front-loaded, top-heavy divisions, in the sense that it has a lot of fighters that have garnered their own niche audience, a lot of respect from boxing diehards, to the extent that we call them the Four Kings, just like these guys from the 80s. So we had Roman Gonzalez, who goes by the name Chocolatito. We had Sorrung Visay, who mixed it up with him twice, mixed it up with Estrada, the third king, and Carlos Cuadras, right? Just like these four guys, they basically kind of round robined each other, and beyond the fact that of their achievements and skills, the fact that they actually fought each other garnered a lot of respect and recognition from boxing fans all over. And Bam Rodriguez, being now still the youngest world champion in boxing today, right?
He is, yes.
He has basically beaten back-to-back two of these four kings, having stepped up 2 weight divisions to 115. So he beat Carlos Cuadras to claim the WBC title, and then went on to stop Sorrung Visay, who has been stopped all the way back early in his career before.
Back when he was a malnourished toy boy.
That's one way to put it. But yes, very, very start of his career. So that's why people are extremely excited about Bam Rodriguez, who wants to go down 1 weight division now to 112, to flyweight. For, I guess, one obvious reason, as Mark very analytically put it, is he's still young. And why skip over a division that he can conquer? In boxing, it matters to have one, to claim that pound for pound status, and obviously to claim possibly in the future a place in the, hallowed halls of the Hall of Fame. Why not try to gain a title at 112 and then come back once again? He has also said that his brother, Joshua Franco, who does go by the nickname El Profesor, by the way, belongs to 115 more properly, and he should fight for titles there when he steps down to 112 and try to get a title match there.
That pisses me off.
The connection with the brother, and he wants to take a step back.
Yeah, like, oh, my brother belongs to this division more than I do. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. They're talking about his brother fighting Gaio. His brother's gonna get fucked up.
I mean, it's even on paper. You can easily make that argument. One of them has just stepped up 2 divisions and won the WBC title. The other one, after all that time, still holds a secondary version of the WBA. So,
and has no elite win.
Yeah, I mean, Maloney.
It's not an elite win at 115.
I know.
mean, when we're
Just
talking
joking.
when we're talking 115, I know you mentioned top loaded, but it's actually stacked. Like, it's really, really stacked with talent. Like, just let's go with it. Like, we've got Chocolatito, we've got Estrada, Rungvisai, Cuadras, Jesse Rodriguez. This isn't any rankings, right? This is just saying names. Kazuto Ioka, Kosoi Tanaka, Donny Nietes, Yerwin Ancajas, the new Martinez who just beat Ancajas. You've Jonathan Rodriguez, you've Francisco Rodriguez. I mean, this division is stacked to the gills with talent. Stacked to the damn gills. That's 12 names who've all been pretty much beating elite guys lately. Like, Ioka lost to Francisco Rodriguez but got the decision. These are all world-class fighters. Kosei Tanaka's just beating Nishida after losing, stepping up a weight division to Ioka. Goes out, beats... Wait, is it Ishida or Kimura? I think it was Sho Kimura. Either way, there's so much talent. Ioka and Donny Nietes are about to have a rematch this week.
Right.
It's just full
people
of
are...
world-class.
By the way, people have completely unplugged to the point that they're talking about college football in the chat. So I guess this has been a good conversation, Mark, about boxing. I'll switch gears back to Watchdog.
Well, this is what happens,
I'm
man.
excited. Yeah. I know. I'm excited for UCLA and USC in the Big Ten because they're switching divisions, apparently. Wish it was SEC, though. I don't even know how to read the name of that division. Apologies. Jake Brooks says, so if you are the SEC, do you take in Clemson and Miami? They might as well be speaking a foreign language, Mark, just as we were.
SEC, I'm assuming if they're saying like Miami and everything like that is Southeastern Conference.
Sure, but what is Clemson and Miami?
I'm assuming they are football teams.
Yeah, I mean, I know they're colleges and football teams, but it really doesn't mean it's as meaningless to me as the name Jesse Rodriguez is meaningless to the audience. So, or FSU. Again, what is that? Or I guess probably not going east with Oklahoma and Texas on the way in. And Watch Nicholas says, I think Notre Dame joining Big Ten would be huge. They never will, though. UCLA, USC, and Notre Dame. SEC or SEC is unfair. It's like NFL light already. Too stacked. And Jake Brooks says LHV on boxing. I mean, look, to have Mark on when we are actually live streaming fight would be just great. But I think this is not the moment to have a boxing discussion, apparently. And SEC equals big dogs of college, and ACC. I think Miami is you see, I mean, I'm lost. I don't know what they're talking about.
To me, literally, what the chat are doing to me is the equivalent of a Richard Mille watch. It's confusing and cheap.
It's hard to follow now. It's hard to follow boxing now that HBO. Well, Showtime is yeah, I'm not gonna say anything about that. HBO is completely out of boxing, so that's an objective
That is
fact.
devastating. That is devastating because HBO fights were just amazing. Just everything, the production, the commentary team, the way they would word things, the political intrigue that they would like generate hate from, like the way they did it was spectacular.
And I mean, look, I'll start with this. The fact that Roy Jones Jr. actually got so emotional that he had to cry at the very last broadcast, I think says something about half a loss. HBO's passing is for boxing. But I'll tell you this. This is also a very simple way of communicating this to the audience. A lot of times I would rather watch one of those Legendary Nights documentaries narrated by Jim Lampley than a fight that is on at this moment. I would rather watch, that documentary. It's more exciting. So Jake Brooks says, let's talk heavyweights. Okay.
Yeah, but now he's lost me with T Fury unified. Like, I'm confused by that.
No, I think he means to, maybe it's just correction. So it's like, will Tyson Fury unify? I think that's what.
Will he unify? It depends on who wins between AJ and Usyk. If Usyk wins, no. If AJ wins, yes.
I agree exactly. There's no reason to complicate it. I think, look, Fury seems to be a little unplugged, except he has such an interesting mind. I'll put it this way, that he can be zoned in immediately if it's a big fight again, because he does care. He likes to say that he's not a businessman, but he cares about both his legacy and the money he makes very strongly. So if it's an Anthony Joshua fight for the undisputed title, I think he will unretire very quickly, whatever that means, and plug back in, and he will be as sharp as he has ever been. But if Usyk wins, I don't think that would be an attractive enough fight for him, and I don't think he believes as strongly as he does about his chances of beating Joshua. As you know, he doesn't believe that he is 100% beating Usyk, whereas I think he genuinely believes that he has AJ's number.
Yeah, I think he looks at Usyk's footwork and probably thinks to himself, "Nah, fuck that shit. Like, I need a lot of money to risk this one." The speed difference is humongous. Like, and it's not just that. It's like he showed. I know it's years ago his weakness with Steve Cunningham, but his weakness and susceptibility to overhand punches has always been there throughout his career, especially from shorter fighters, and it showed. It even showed against Otto Wally, and his ability
Sure.
against southpaws is not the best. Um, so I think Usyk is a big nightmare with that level of head movement. The Fury would have to lean on him, but then he has to catch him. He has to catch up with him to do that. And if he wraps his arms around him, Usyk is literally just going to pull his head under the arm and turn, and the referee's going to be forced to break them. Like, he's not going to be on him for long.
So the usual, basically, you are saying his usual arsenal of tactics and tricks won't work at all, or won't work as easily on a fighter of Usyk's stature. Yeah.
No, he can beat Usyk for sure, but like it's not going to be anything we've seen him do. Not those ways, and he can't fight how he used to. If he could fight how he did against Klitschko or Hammer or Chisora in the second fight, like that way, that movement, then sure he could beat the fuck out of Usyk. The problem for him is he can't do that anymore because his feet are shut, and nobody's paying attention to it. Tyson Fury has no footwork anymore, none. His footwork is gone. He is so slow on his feet, it's ridiculous. He makes Dillian White. He actually was slower on his feet than Dillian White was in that fight, which is sad to think. The reason he was able to land is because of such a reach advantage. Sorry, go on.
No, I think it's just, I think people have, I'm just going to get this out of my chest. In boxing commentary on YouTube and beyond, people sometimes really spout off these like mantras, or I don't know, whatever you call it, like, rote memorization of certain phrases, like styles make fights, for example, which actually usually works as long as you are, you substantiate it, you fill that up with some substance. But another one of those truisms is, heavyweights age slower, or they find their prime later in age. So basically that throws every question about heavyweights aging out of the window. No one pays attention to how these fighters actually age like everyone else and lose certain abilities with time. And footwork is always the first to go. And since power is last to go, and that can always be the big eraser in especially in heavyweight boxing, people completely forget the kind of deficiencies and devolutions in time that you just pointed out in Fury's case. I do want to ask you this question, and I do want to answer this question as well. Can Ruiz ever get back to championship form?
Well, I love the way you emphasized on the word form, because he never actually had championship form itself. He had one win.
I was gonna say, if I allowed myself to respond to this question first, I would have started with, even in question form, I have a hard time the and Andy Ruiz Jr. occurring in the same sentence, but go on. Yes.
Yeah. The short answer is no. Look, I don't like to do this, but he got lucky in his win against AJ, and I'm not saying it was a lucky punch. He got lucky that Anthony Joshua was the champion that he fought. Because Anthony Joshua is very bad with his decision making for his game plans. Let's fight at mid range with a 6'1", 270-pound fast-handed Mexican. That doesn't sound clever. Now, secondly, let's box with the southpaw with extreme footwork and a good jab and a left hand that's able to get his head off of the line and keep shifting angles the whole fight and do all types of feints.
Not to make excuses for Anthony Joshua, but can I pose the question in another way? Do you think McCracken actually knows how to game plan for a professional world championship fight?
Absolutely.
He does?
I'll give you an example of it. Watch how Carl Froch fought Jean Pascal.
Okay, I will. I'm not familiar with the fight, actually, even though I know
Carl
the two
Froch,
fighters.
known as a brawler, known as a fighter who fights, they worked on a game plan for Pascal to use the jab and constantly do it. Constantly keep the jab going, get the two over, get off of the line. When he starts bull rushing, to drop your elbows in and throw up that uppercut. They actually had a game plan on how to fight a swarmer. They had numerous game plans throughout the years. As far as McCracken goes, even with Joshua, they showed a great game plan a few times. Against Povetkin would be one, how he made a designated body attack, and instead of fighting excessively tall to where Povetkin would be able to get him off balance, he came lower. I know people were criticizing that, but it made sense. You don't want to be open for Povetkin to leap up at you. And he hasn't got the clinch game. So yeah, they have shown the ability to have game plans, but it's not McCracken who's been in the camp after the Povetkin fight. They got 3 or 4 more people in that camp, man, and there's too many hands in the cookie jar. And
okay,
I do think Rob McCracken's actually a very good trainer. Myself personally, I think he's very underrated. I think he's overly criticized. And I don't think he actually had the say on AJ's game plans, to be honest with you.
Going back to Ruiz, I think I will approach it from another perspective. I think this weight loss program is not really doing any wonders for Ruiz. I've seen him even thinner in this camp than he was for his last fight.
Until he takes his shirt off.
He did, actually. I saw him, doing some planks with his shirt off, and he looked. I mean, he looked. It was a video too. He just looked, for his body frame, as we have used to. He just looked like, yeah, he was dropping a lot of weight, and I don't know, man. I mean, this is a guy who knows boxing, who has lived and breathed and grew up with boxing. He should know that is not good for his punch resistance. So unless he's really taking these stupid shirts that he what was it? No quiero estar gordo. Ya no quiero estar gordo. Enough. I don't want to be fat anymore. Like, I don't want to stay fat. So unless he's trying to turn that into a brand, and that's what he's focusing on rather than his boxing career.
Andy Ruiz El Flaco.
Someone should remind him that dropping all that weight for, you know, that you carried and that you fought with for more than 2 decades, basically, cannot be good all of a sudden. I mean, he's draining himself. And when was the last time that was a concern for a heavyweight, that he's draining himself? Isn't that the whole purpose of that division, that there's no limit, so you don't need to drain?
Well, that's the idea. And it should be the idea. But as far as Andy Ruiz goes, the short answer is no. And I think that's very fair to say. He's going to beat Luis Ortiz. He's going to beat him. Luis Ortiz was out on his feet against Charles Martin. Luis Ortiz is shot to pieces, and that's even if you believe he was ever that good to begin with.
Right.
So,
yeah, I mean, look, never say never, right? Ruiz was knocked down against Chris Areola, who is, you know, God, I mean, yeah, no disrespect, but he's really at the tail end of his career.
Yeah, but you're forgetting.
So who knows
something.
where we?
You're forgetting something. That was Mexican versus Mexican. Chris Areola in that fight entered his fucking prime. Because that's what happens when Mexicans go up against each other. It doesn't matter how past it they are. Like, you can have, we've seen so many Mexicans fight each other in the past when they were shot and suddenly turn into prime fighters, because it's like, I can't lose to this Donnie. I can't lose to this Donnie here. No, that's not going to fly. He don't even speak Spanish.
All right. Yeah, I mean, look, this is actually a very underrated rivalry in boxing, because people love waxing poetic about, like, you know, Mexico versus Puerto Rico, and, like, you know, but the thing is, actually, the biggest rivalry in boxing is Mexico versus Mexico, or better yet, Mexican versus Chicano, Mexican American. Yeah, or right, like you said, you know, that the other kinds of rivalries and grudges that Mexican Americans might have against each other. And Areola's grudge was, of course, like, you know, this guy actually got a good shot, you know, at World Championship, and he actually made it, whereas I couldn't. So, like you said, it was a different fight altogether. But we have seen so many instances this. For me, of course, the kind of on the pantheon, the highest level has to be the Marco Antonio Barrera versus Eric Morales, the trilogy for those. And that was like a rivalry of different Mexican cities, of course.
That's one of the greatest rivalries in the history of boxing, bar none. No matter what anybody says, it's one of the greatest trilogies of all time. In my opinion, it's the greatest trilogy of the last 20 years. Sue me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. I love it. Yeah, and I'm a huge fan of Marco Antonio Barrera anyway, so I guess I'm a little biased. Jake Brooks says, I showed up where Iron Mike worked out for the Lennox Lewis fight in 2002. I signed up for a membership just to catch the sight of him. Yeah, those were the times.
And now he dresses up as a bumblebee on Instagram.
That was beautiful. That was beautiful. Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. That's what I exactly said.
Float like a bumblebee, sting like a shopping spree. That's what that said.
Man, I mean, yeah, Iron Mike is still my icon. Maybe we shouldn't call this character Iron Mike.
Hello, I'm feeling beautiful. Hello, I'm feeling beautiful. Hello, I'm feeling beautiful. Oh, I'm feeling beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Oh, I'm feeling beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Oh.
Was that really necessary?
Yes. I mean, look, internet, once you put things out there on the internet, you know, punters are gonna look back at it and bring it out and you know, open up the old files. I'm feeling beautiful. Mike
To
Tyson.
be fair, though, the man when he was at his peak was probably the most devastating thing we've ever seen in the sport. Like, we can just be honest about that. At his peak,
Yeah, I mean, look, you only just, you know, pick any aspect of his training routine that you can, you know, that is copiously posted all over YouTube. Want to cleanse your palate, if you want to hit the reset button on your brain after what you just saw, after the performance you saw by Mike Tyson, just write Tyson neck exercises on YouTube, so you can kind of recycle and start fresh about what you think. GB Vol says, yes, that was after. Was that before or after he beat up that guy on the airplane? I think actually it was immediately after, GB Vol. After he got that energy out of his system, he felt beautiful yet again. Great question. Love my audience. But that was like, I mean, I think he was going on some late night show. Yeah, Bob, New York City. He says, I'm a big fan of the Vacheron Constantin overseas and the dual time. Here's my issue. My only issue has to do with the Maltese cross. Not sure how to get past that, especially since my wife is Jewish. You don't need to get over that. There's so many other watches, man. Choose something else. I think
try
that's
a Richard Mille.
I think that's a beautiful watch, honestly. It's not for me, pretty much along the same lines you just out there. But that being said, you know, why restrict yourself to of watches? Wristwatchholic, my friend here in Los Angeles, he has that watch, and with the blue dial, that's so desired by everyone. And it's really gorgeous. But you know, if you feel like it's gonna offend someone who is so dear to you, pick another watch. I'm sure there's something else out there for you, even in this genre. I don't know, have a Chopard Alpine Eagle. Have you looked into Bulgari Octo Finissimo? Have you looked into, and I dread of even mentioning the name of this brand, but hey, Gérard Perregaux Laureato. Have you looked into those models? I'm sure you have considered it somehow. And maybe that's it. Or you love it so much, you just get it because that's the watch you want. Why not? But there's a watch for everyone out there. And if that watch is out there, it's for someone. So that's why I try to, you know, express something positive to watches that I genuinely end up bashing afterwards. But I have more positive things to say about the overseas line than anything else. recognizing that it's not for me either.
I've actually never seen it.
You have seen it now, though, right?
No, I don't see anything on my screen. That could
You
just be
weren't
my
looking while I was
connection.
showing the watch? No, but I
No,
mean, a minute ago you were not looking then, right? Because I was
no, I've
showing
been
it.
looking at the screen. It's just my connection's pretty poor, so it's probably not just loading up.
Okay. So let me pull it up now. So this, just the exact model he's looking at is, it has different dial colors, of course, but it's this.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it's a beautiful piece.
Oh, wow.
It is a beautiful piece.
That's really pretty.
And it comes with that integrated bracelet and like a quick change strap system where you can take that off and put it on a leather strap, take it off and put it on a rubber strap. And of course, it has this day and night indicator, this date indicator at 6 o'clock, as well as a second, another hour hand for the second time zone as well. So dual time for that reason.
Yeah. It's gorgeous.
It's a very, very beautiful piece. And people keep saying this, which drives me mad. Like, they have the best blue dial in the industry, but it is a nice style. Yeah, it is a very lively shade of blue, like kind of like an ink blue, actually, in person, more than the lighter shade you see here.
Mm-hmm.
What's happening? Jake, help me out. Who is trolling with the avatar? Who's avatar?
Is he talking about mine?
I don't know, honestly, Bob. I mean, I can go into Bob's channel. He has been there since 2013. He has like a couple of videos, some playlists. It doesn't look like a troll account. So anyway, it's a fair question. It's not something that would trip me up either. Either, JB. It's no worries, no worries.
Does he not like Wally?
No, Bob. I didn't suspect that. I don't think you're a troll account. Honestly, I wouldn't have responded to the question seriously, which I actually care about. So both the horological aspect of it and the imagery. So don't worry about it. It's just some people have a case against this channel, and they keep coming in with certain controversial material and not even questions. Yours was very specific, very honest, and beautifully phrased. And I think you got an answer. It's a great watch. If you are so set on it, you figure out what it takes to get that watch. If it's worth it, you get it. Otherwise, there are other watches in that genre that are still accessible, because Patek Nautilus is not for most people. And Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, again, in any iteration, these two watches are extremely difficult to get at retail, extremely expensive in the secondary market. But there's still pieces like the Chopard Alpine Eagle. And none of these are perfect. Of course, you can find something to not like about each and every one of them. But I would give them a chance, because Pine Eagle, I liked a lot of things about it when I actually put it on my wrist. Not a huge fan of the movement that is inside it, because it's not that special for a watch at that price range, which is 13K plus now at retail, although you can get it cheaper. I don't like how that date is so big, and right at right between 4 and 5 o'clock. And I'm not really enamored by the bracelet either, but otherwise there's a lot to love about this watch. And I do. I like the Bulgari Octo Finissimo again, which is at the same price point, same segment. By the way, that these are basically halfway, right, from the Vacheron Constantin overseas dual time, which lists at $27,100. You have here the Bulgari Octo Finissimo in steel. And as you know, this is kind of a modernized, updated take on what was originally a Gérald Genta design. So it's the same designer as the Royal Oak and as the Patek Philippe Nautilus, among other watch designs. So it does have a very nice style and different options as well. The one I really like actually in steel is the brushed grain gray dial, which gives it this monochromatic aesthetic. Again, you may or may not like something about this watch. I think it's just about perfect, maybe too wide on the wrist, but it has a beautiful movement. It has a very respectable
I like it.
movement, water resistance. Yeah, and yeah, in titanium or in steel, like it basically disappears on your wrist, which you might love, which you might hate. Again, some people like the watches to feel hefty and robust on their wrist. This feels somewhat delicate, very elegant, but absolutely non-present to you. Although visually, it's a watch that is very much out there for everyone else to see. And finally, I said there's the Girard-Perregaux Laureato, which has its own kind of following. And I can see what they like about it. To me, it just reminds me of another design that I really like and that preceded it. Again, with all due respect, it reminds me too much of the Royal Oak for me to genuinely like this. But hey, Girard-Perregaux has had its own provenance, its own well-cherished existence as a watchmaker. And this is also a beautiful watch. And maybe it is the watch for you. Who knows? I don't know if actually any of these watches come specifically with a GMT or dual time configuration. Let's check it out. All Laureato watches, they have chronographs. They have kind of tricked out, skeletonized versions, titanium. So I guess the Laureato does not really. They have like gem sets. Yeah, I'm not sure if they have a dual time. Let's see if the Octo Finissimo has maybe a GMT. Does it? Yeah, they have like a chronograph GMT for the Octo Finissimo. Which you like. That brings up the price point a little bit. This is how they represent the second time zone. Here you have a 30-minute totalizer. Here you have a running seconds on a subsidiary dial, and the chronograph seconds, of course, in the center. And I think one thing I like about the Octofinissimo chronographs is how nicely the pushers get integrated into the design. And there you have the pusher for that hour hand, I'm assuming, on the 24-hour / second time zone indicator. So that is an option. Maybe it's a revolting design to you, in which case please accept my apologies. And Chopin Alpine Eagle, does it have a GMT or travel time? I don't think so. No, not really. And Bob says, I think I will look for a different option other than the Vacheron Constantin. Racing R, hey man. My thoughts on the Vacheron Constantin dual time Everest titanium, I think it's a stunning watch. It's a stunning watch. I love that watch. Let's pull it up. We were just looking at it, Racing R, actually, in the two shows before, when we were taking kind of a deep dive at Vacheron Constantin. I like how the dial looks on that. I like how the color scheme is, like, the orange hands. That's that texture of the dial, the orange accents. Not necessarily a fan of how the titanium bezel and the crowns contrast with the rest. I think a full titanium look, which is apparently how the prototype was cast, could have been better. But I mean, the rotor is stunning in overseas anyways, and this is even better because it speaks directly to the to this particular limited edition with a whole panorama, with a whole sight of the Everest. I think this is a beautiful watch. It's a stunning piece. But since they were so limited in production, I think you can only get them in the secondary market now because they're sold out. So it comes with a very distinct premium. And yeah, welcome back, Racing Art. It's nice to see you. New York City says, I've got a 7 3/4 wrist, so I do need a watch that will wear large enough. Yeah. Oh, you like the chrono? Okay, well, go to a Bulgari boutique or go to an authorized dealer that carries Bulgari watches. Especially the authorized dealers, I think. Look, the Octo Finissimo, especially in the chronograph version, that's not the hottest watch. That's not the easiest watch to sell. So if you can find an authorized dealer that has it in stock, they would probably offer you a good discount on it too. So put it on, try it out. If you actually like it, you might end up with a nice deal on a watch you will love to wear, because that's a watch that's very much present on the wrist, that will occupy some good chunk of real estate on the wrist. And Jake Brooks says, Lange und Söhne for that money. Hey, since the secondary market has been going down, I think you can find some decent deals on a white gold. Hey guys, do you remember that Lange und Söhne is coming out with a new release on July 14th? So for any one of you who is interested in an A. Lange und Söhne watch, please hold off for a little while, because they might have something very interesting in store for you in just a matter of a week, basically. But I'm a huge fan of the Odysseus series, as you might know. I had the chance to try the titanium number 0 that has been making the rounds internationally. And I found it to be an incredible watch. Of course, that was also distinctive. That was also distinguished by the amount of hand finishing they had done on the case and on the full bracelet, which was exquisite in terms of the contrast of mirror polished and brushed grain surfaces. But the white one is the white gold version, I think, may still be my absolute favorite in the line. And for those of you who watch the show enough times, you know that I have like a strange attraction towards precious metal watches on rubber bands. I guess because it's so different from everything else that I have in my collection, everything else that I have grown to like. And so that might be just one very specific reason for my appreciation of it, but also I think simply because of the cognitive dissonance. It's something that I enjoy, right? You know, putting what is supposed to be a precious metal on, again, what is normally understood to be, quote unquote, a lesser material, is just incredible. But yes, this is, if you can actually get this from an authorized dealer or from the boutique, this is an incredible watch to wear, to own. And actually, it's not out of reach in boutiques. You just have to establish some sort of purchase history, um, which is taking usually one watch, right? I mean, they were pretty clear to me at the boutique that if you buy a Lange one with them, for example, they can put you um, they can put you up for a white gold Odysseus, not the steel one apparently, which is extremely limited at this point. But this is a beautiful movement, the Datomatic movement, with that digital display of day and date, but also this. You have usually the swan neck regulator. In this case, in the Odysseus series, you have a swan neck bridge, and rather than that floral design that usually decorates the swan neck, here you have like a wave design, that goes with the nautical theme of the watch. And as you know, that's a freehand engraving. So, and the rest of the movement too is, of course, consists of all hand finished components, of course, but with the help of machines, which is how it's usually done when it comes to parts of a caliber. And yeah, that I love that contrast between the two materials too when it comes to the rotor as well, like having that platinum weight. And I think they have like a composite material for the rest, the skeletonized rotor. Let me seek the name of that material. Yeah, it's a black rhodium plated rotor. So the looking movement, and those heat screws, of course, are one of the lovely details, and I love seeing those, especially on watches that also have like heat blued hands. So you have, like, you know, that sort of coordination between the face of your watch and the exhibition of the caliber. And here, of course, you have the ruby set into a gold chaton here too. So a lot of very interesting details and very special executions when it comes to a watch of this caliber. And I think the list price is even higher than the overseas, of course, around $40,000 for the white gold version. If you are, and if you actually have access to it, you know, it's really, I find it really the watch to get among all these hyped up sports watches. I just want to show you the titanium one that I tried out, because that was just really special, really incredible. And I specifically left it at a date, at a single digit date, because it drives some people mad that they don't have 2 digits for the display of single digit dates. Like, it's not 03, but 3. Just so that is clear, I don't mind it at all. But then again, it is something you should know. Yes, guys. So we have just gone past 2 hours. If you have been enjoying the content, if you have been learning from it, please click the like button, hit the like button. It really matters. It really helps. It gives me a little bit more exposure. And if you could, in fact, go out of your way to share the link on other platforms, spread the word, you know, on other channels, tell your friends. That would be really great. And I'm already grateful for your presence and support in the chat, on the panel. And that's not something I take for granted. As you can see, every day I come very much prepared for the show, and I always have different content for you. So if you appreciate it, just give a like. That's where it starts. Spread the word. And that's already great. And it will help me get to 1,000 subscribers, and also finally get the channel monetized. But in the meantime, if you want to contribute, if you want to help me out and help me keep this channel independent and self-sustaining, feel free to send a contribution on PayPal, gmail.com, lordhellespondv@gmail.com. I also have a Cash App, which is $LHVVV, $LHVVV. And I just opened a Patreon with the explicit purpose for contributions that will help me dedicate more time into this channel, increase both the quality and quantity of the content, and especially to produce a show that will take place earlier in the day in addition to this show, so I can have something more specifically directed to the UK-based audience, to a continental European audience, and to people who are on the East Coast as well. So I've posted all the links there in my last message, and they are also included in the video description, as well as the crawling ticker down there. I wanted to share with you, produce a video about this tomorrow. Just 1 second, guys. All right. I wanted to share with you my most recent post on Instagram. It's like a belated celebration of July 4th, for which we came together on this channel. And by the way, follow me on Instagram. You can see Old New England is the name of my account there. And I wanted to highlight the association of Chuck Yeager with Rolex over time. Chuck Yeager is, of course, known for having worn a number of different Rolex watches. It was a Rolex Oyster of an unspecified model that accompanied him on his supersonic flight in 1947 in October, with the Bell X-1. And later on in his life, he wore this Coke GMT Master 2 that somehow became very much associated with him. And you can see here an ad that Rolex put out in 2007, which was, of course, celebrating the 60th anniversary of the first supersonic flight. And it's actually one of these instances where Rolex produced absolutely beautiful copy. Absolutely. And this is what they say, 60 years later, his achievement still reverberates. I see what you did there, Rolex. It wasn't just courage sitting in the cockpit with Chuck Yeager when he broke the sound barrier in October of 1947. It was 2 broken ribs, an intrepid pioneering spirit, and his Rolex chronometer. His achievement was so remarkable, so top secret, that it wasn't until a year later that the rest of the world finally heard about it. Today, 60 years later, his feat still echoes. Kind of amazing the way they play with that notion of supersonic in the marketing copy. This is one of the times where they got it absolutely right. Except, of course, they were actually upstaged by the Japanese brand, the real McCoys, who in 1997, so for the Golden Jubilee of this event, actually bought 50 watches from Rolex, these 16710s, these GMT Master 2s with the Coke bezel, and had them customized with adding a line of red writing, Chuck Yeager, and a line of their own brand, the real McCoys. And they also had the case back engraved with an image of the Bell X-1, General Chuck Yeager, October 1947. October 19, right? October 14, my apologies. So October 14, 1947, and the real McCoys here as well. And there you go. That is Chuck Yeager in full flight gear, wearing a Rolex GMT Master. And he has also been seen wearing a 6538 Submariner earlier in his career. Big crown Submariner, so to speak, same as quote unquote the original, or one of the original Bond watches. And the real McCoys is again the Japanese brand that is kind of a custodian of American style. Among other things, they do these faithful reproductions of old school flight jackets, like leather jackets, pilot jackets, and they have a bunch of other kinds of products that harken back to a lost era of Americana. Beautiful pieces, usually extremely overpriced, but I don't think they've ever had a hard time finding clients for these pieces. Let me get a drink, guys. Just a quick second for me. Hey guys, welcome back. Thanks for your patience. Thank you for being here once again. I was just sharing the most recent post on my Instagram, and I will do a video about this, especially centering on this limited edition of 50 GMT Masters that were sold by the Japanese brand, the real McCoys, that carry Chuck Yeager's name. Of course, Chuck Yeager left us almost 2 years ago now, and I thought it would be a nice way to perhaps celebrate his memory, the memory of his achievements, and also in a belated fashion, once again paying tribute to the Independence Day, to July 4th. And I also wanted to go back and take a look at a piece that I really like from Hbo, which is the Master Control Calendar Chronograph. And I think, again, it's one of these value propositions that Hbo puts out, especially in steel, even at retail price. These are extremely extremely attractive. This is the calendar version, of course, and you have the calendar plus chrono. Or wait, is it? Sorry, that's just the chrono with the moon phase, I think. No, I don't know what I'm talking about at this point, guys. Yes, the calendar, triple calendar chrono, and the triple calendar. And they both come both with the metal bracelet and the interchangeable strap. I think the calendar is relatively readable. Again, at the end of the day, it is very much about the moon phase that is at the center of the show, that holds center stage. But of course, you know, when it comes to the day and the month and the date, especially on a silver dial with silver hands and indicators, there's very little contrast. Except for the date, I don't see much of a problem. And you might say, hey, date is the most important part. And I can't deny that. But I really like the bracelets on Hbo's recent models. I think the stainless steel bracelets are a total hit for me. And I mean, they have always been excelling with the leather straps at any rate. And I think both of these watches are great value propositions at as part of Hbo's offering. So let's take a look at them. Page. I don't know where the chrono has gone. Did they sell out or something? There we go. Yeah, I'm kind of bummed out that there's no other dial variation for this. I feel like maybe in a black dial version, maybe even contrasting subdials, this could be an interesting watch. Would probably make it much sportier than it is now. But I think that would be a cool proposition, you know, to have a triple date or triple calendar watch with that has that sort of sporty look. Maybe they thought it might clash a little too much with with their Polaris Perpetual, which is of course not a chronograph, but at any rate, this is of course a smaller case size, and it is also at a very different price range. The Polaris Perpetual is, I think, 32,700, and this is 17,300. So you both get the triple date, which of course you will have to manipulate 4 times a year, because a triple calendar doesn't know the difference between months of different lengths. But that being said, I think this is a very handsome watch that looks great both on the full bracelet and on that leather strap. And it has their quick exchange mechanism, which makes it quite easy to change around straps. And I always like the fact that in their more complicated watches, Jaeger-LeCoultre almost always uses these precious metal and usually pink gold skeletonized rotors. I think it's a nice touch. I'm going to send the link out again and see if anyone else wants to join. And just as I was saying that, since I was talking about the Polaris Perpetual, I also want to show you that particular watch. That's 32,800, right? And I really, I'm looking forward to these watches going into the secondary market, because also this is not just one perpetual calendar movement. You might know the history of Günther Blümlein and how he was spearheading particular horological revolution in the 90s, especially when he was leading this brand, Les Manufactures Horlogères, that included in its possession IWC, Jaeger-LeCoultre, and also was at the time resurrecting A. Lange und Söhne in collaboration with Walter Lange as well. And in his leadership for IWC, of course, Kurt Klaus, who was head of the movements department at IWC, basically invented this module, perpetual calendar module, that allowed adjusting all the functions of the perpetual calendar with a single pusher, because he managed to synchronize them all. So this is a watch that's builds on that lineage, that takes after that lineage, because that was the perpetual calendar movement that was also transferred to Jaeger-LeCoultre. Those two companies, those two watchmakers, being part of the same structure. And in a sports watch, that one pusher system makes even more sense, since Polaris, as you know, grows out of a dive watch heritage itself, and it is really important that it is sealed, right? That it is pressure resistant, that it is water resistant up to the proper ratings. So to have just one pusher that might actually threaten that is is actually very helpful for a sports watch. Of course, the 1 crown, you know what it does. That's for the time. The other crown actually helps you rotate the inner bezel, which has been one of the unique features of the Polaris line. And I really like the way that this is all lined up so well. And not only do you have this more visual, more romantic expression of the moon phase, you also have it showing what it does in the southern hemisphere as well. So you basically get the moon phases in northern and the southern hemisphere. So you have just about everything on this watch when it comes to a perpetual calendar. You have the year, you have the month, of course. You have the day of the week, you have the date. And I think it's a very beautiful piece. Proper 10 bar, 100-meter water resistance. You can wear it on a rubber band. So it's quite fascinating to have something like this in stainless steel in both of these options in a quick exchange system. Because otherwise, right, something similar to this, I think Vacheron Constantin's overseas in I think they have a white gold version of it that they make in perpetual calendar. Let's check that out quickly. We have about 45 more minutes to go. I'll go until midnight today, not much longer than that. And you see, for example, this is the yellow gold version. I kind of remember having seen it in white gold. I might be mistaken. But that might just be it, no? No, there is in white gold, yeah. And yeah, of course, this is a different material, right? So that's not something that I miss. But speaking of something like this, right? When you have a good $100,000 for a watch like that, which is, again, a beautiful piece, and also comes with a quick change strap system, rubber and leather as the other options. But of course, it's at a very different price segment altogether. And again, that reflects the ideology of the two brands, right? Vacheron Constantin is a high horology brand, thorough and thorough. So it's with that, obviously, they are invested in giving you the most exquisite, most exclusive, and the most precious pieces, where price doesn't matter, right? Where money is no object. Whereas Jaeger-LeCoultre represents an outlook, an ideology that aligned itself with what is sometimes called the democratization of complications, right? Which is basically making what are otherwise prestige complications available to a widest possible group of consumers, usually being encased in stainless steel helps that. So you have something like this, which is again a beautiful watch. You might say in another category, already with the choice of the metal. That's the most direct competitor, a sports watch with a perpetual calendar. And it's an ultra thin movement, right? So it's a very different segment. Again, I recognize that because what you have in Polaris will be different altogether, right? Here, the thickness of the watch is just over 8.1. By the way, this is 5 bar resistance, right? 50 meters of a depth rating. Whereas you have in the Polaris perpetual calendar, you have a watch, of course, punk of stainless steel at almost 12 millimeters thick, right? So it's a different watch. It's a more accessible watch for that. And even at the retail price, you are really talking about a fraction. And I simply cannot wait until a few years down the line when these start hitting the secondary market in larger numbers. The leads, I think I actually know who it is, and it's very disturbing. I know where it comes from. I don't think it's any of these names that you're mentioning. And yeah, that person is just putting himself and people around him into a very tough situation. I can tell you that, the leads. It's not going to turn out well. And like you said, you know, it's just bad form anyways. It tells you something very specific about the mentality of the person, about the disposition of that person, about the mental health of that person. It's a matter of genuine concern. Yeah, I hope that person doesn't put himself in some sort of danger by doing things like this. It's not good. You don't want to risk things by playing around like that. You know, because there are certain people that you can play around with, and there are others that mess with. I'm not gonna say anything more. The leads, I think you understood what I mean. And you too, my friend who is listening. And I say friend just as a matter of expression because you know you're not my friend. Back to horology, guys. This is an amazing piece, and you can already get a sense about what I'm talking, what I was gesturing towards there. Because when you look at the Master Ultra Thin series, for example, right, and you have the piece, the so-called Doctor Strange, right, which is the ultra thin perpetual. Very different feel compared to the Polaris perpetual calendar, because you're talking about, first of all, a case that is much smaller in diameter. You're talking about, again, an ultra thin piece, which is right under. That surprises me. Why don't they say that in technical details? Okay, master ultra thin petrol JLC thickness. Mm, 9.2. So it's very thin compared to the Polaris Perpetual Calendar. A very different feel, very different character of a watch. A proper dress watch, whereas again, the Polaris Perpetual Calendar was a proper sports watch. But I'm just using this as kind of an idea of how these trend in the secondary market, right? This is the list price, 25,000. So if you were to go to a Hbo boutique, you would, that's what you would pay, plus, of course. On the other hand, in the secondary market, again, taking Chrono 24 not as the Bible, so to speak, but as a guide, right? You can see how in Germany, for example, you have a piece that's 17,000. And that's in steel. That's already a few years old, 5 years old. Seems rather clean, but of course, probably polished for sale, as they say. And it doesn't really come with box or papers, but you have what, basically 33% off right there. Right. So in thinking that this is 5 years away from production, in a similar case, if you have something like the Polaris Perpetual Calendar, right, which lists for around 32.8K, yeah, but you can realistically expect to find it in the secondary market a few years down the line around $22,500. And I think that will be an incredible deal for a sports watch in steel with the option to wear it on a rubber band for under 25K. Perpetual calendar. There's just not much out there that gives you that of option. We have Hbo Ultra Günther Blümlein to thank for that. One second, guys. Crisis averted. Hmm. What else going on in the world? I know that speaking of these, Vacheron Constantin just came out with the skeletonized version of their ultra thin perpetual calendar in pink gold. Which again, I'm not a huge fan of skeletonized pieces, so I can only say that this is interesting. Of course, I do like the fact that they carry over that skeletonizing to the movement itself, right? Where you also get, for example, a skeletonized rotor. It is a trade-off, of course, because the overseas watches actually have a beautiful rotor in either case. You have an even more detailed and more striking execution of the moon phase with an entire constellation on top of it. It's very, very precious, very beautiful. Probably in matching pink gold, by the way, all those accents. And of course, it must be incredibly uh, light wearing, perhaps nicely balanced as well by the fact that it is executed fully in precious metal. And they kind of folded into the article a conversation with the president of Vacheron Constantin in the Americas, Alexander Schmidt. Um, and I wonder what he said. So he's saying that it's not as easy as dropping a movement in the new case material, because they had this exact same model, of course, in white gold before. It's really a question of how many watches we can produce with a movement that's extremely limited. And I think they're already facing that movement at different segments and complications of the overseas line altogether. When we launch any novelty, we want to give it some space to breathe. Then, as you start to fill the orders for the original watch, it is probably produced a little bit less, allowing us to fill in that production in a different metal. We're very happy to have that demand and desirability, he says, about the growing interest in the overseas as a line. But we see comparable demand for our classic watches, for example, the Corne de Vache, the 1921. We spent a lot of time talking about those watches, remember, in the last few days. And I think they're both quite beautiful. My favorite from the Historique line, their line of reissues from the Vacheron Constantin archive, is of course Corne de Vache, is the hand-wound chronograph with those stylized cow's horns lugs. But the so-called driver's watch in 1921 is quite stunning as well. You can't walk into the store and buy a 1921 now. That's not true. Actually, you can, if you want tomorrow, you can walk into the Vacheron Constantin boutique in Beverly Hills, and they have it in a few different metals and sizes. You have to wait. And you can see in these words, by the way, how they're playing around, um, with this scarcity marketing, because I was just in that boutique on Saturday, right? And this is the president of Americas for Vacheron Constantin. There's no way he doesn't know the stocks of his boutiques. And the Conde de Vache was non-existent in the boutique. I admit that. But the 1921, tried white gold for the, and in pink gold for the 36 millimeter case. And I have the video to prove it. So, Mr. Schmidt, please do not misrepresent your own stock to inflame some sort of artificial demand for your products. They're already very desirable. They're already very beautiful. They're already very exclusive. There's no reason to manipulate people. Going back to what Mr. Schmidt was saying, yeah, I think this is actually great. I really, Yasha, you're right. This not only beautiful, but like you said, it's a great counterpoint to Royal Oak Perpetual. It's a great piece, and I've always loved, again, those sports chic watches from that particular time period, carrying on also the tradition of prestige complications. I think that's one of the high points for me of Swiss watchmaking, even though I would have a hard time getting near any of these pieces. Again, not a huge fan of the skeletonized execution myself, but I understand how this is an acquired taste, and very tasteful indeed for those who appreciate it. And the moon phase is just really drafted beautifully. Drawn, I should say. And anywhere else, my love for brown dials. I thought when the overseas South Winding had, for a very short interval, that brown dial, I thought that was the best version, actually. I love brown dials, especially on pink gold watches. But in this case, since you have the moon phase and a dial that is otherwise, pardon me, skeletonized, I think it's actually a nice little contrast, nice little interplay between the two. Oh, I want to share a public service announcement that, yes, let me do that right away, Anthony. After, I will do that first, and then have a little public service announcement to close. And this is something that Big Meech, Smokin' Joe shared with us. So we'll look at that last. Let me pull this one here. Actually, I need to download it from elsewhere. Let's see. Overseas schedule calendar. Ultra thin skeleton image. And then I think the hot one now, of course, for AP Royal Oak is the ceramic one for the perpetual. But let me pull up one in pink gold, ideally. I wonder if they have it in skeletonized version in pink gold, though. Let me see. Start with the current lineup. Yeah, they do have an open worked dial. But that's Yeah, there we go. Okay. So I'll share my screen. And let's see if I can do this. Can you guys see that when I put them next to each other? Wait, I'll have to double check from yet another source just to be sure. Yeah. All right, so that's where we have it. This is the Royal Oak in pink gold and perpetual calendar. And I think it is really the blue accents that make the overseas perpetual calendar in this open worked version much more striking. And it hurts me to admit it because I'm usually siding with the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak as the original, as the first in this particular race of integrated sports watches. But I think there's something quite distinctive and beautiful about the overseas here, and it starts with those blue accents against the pink gold. I think the fact that they actually preserve those loomed hands that come with their regular configuration, right? You still have that sports watch aesthetic emphasized a little more, italicized a little more. And you have, I think, a much more beautiful expression of the moon phase, if you ask me, when it comes to this open work skeletonized version of the perpetual calendar, ultra thin, with the Vacheron Constantin overseas. So my vote here will be for the Vacheron Constantin overseas perpetual calendar skeleton in pink gold. And I do want to see the pricing on it just to have an idea. Probably it's the kind of watch, if you need to ask, you can't buy. So they will probably say pricing upon request there. But hey, why not check it out? Yeah, it is priced on request. But considering the ultra thin perpetual calendar lists for 93, and I'm not even sure if that comes on a full bracelet. It does not. So we are probably looking at 200 for the open worked version, for the skeletonized version. This was the... Yeah, I'm not even sure that if they added that blue dial version to the website yet. This was the white one. Full white gold bracelet, ultra thin, open worked. And again, with the blue accents on the dial. Priced on request, but again, I'm guessing, considering the full bracelet ultra thin without the open work is over 100,000 already. I'm guessing we're probably talking about 150 plus. But then again, that's the segment. I think in the secondary market, any ultra thin perpetual calendar from the Royal Oak lineage, you are looking at a $250,000 watch, basically. So that is the direct competition. That is what you identified as the audience as well. Anthony Napolitano says, I think AP has much better finishing on the movement. Let's take a quick look at that. Let's see, Royal Oak, perpetual calendar, ultra thin movement. I mean, again, habitually, I would say the same thing, Anthony. But then again, I have not actually delved into the finishing of a perpetual calendar Vacheron Constantin movement. So I would be talking, for the most part, out of habit, there without an actual hands-on. But yes, by and large, I do prefer the kind of work that Audemars Piguet does to the kind of work that Vacheron Constantin does at this level. But then that might just be my bias. And honestly, it's hard to see anything to complain about this sort of work. Guys, we're going for another 10 minutes or so. Again, please hit the like button if you haven't done so yet. Subscribe if you haven't. I really cherish your support and presence. Each and every subscriber means a lot to me. So thanks for being here. But if you could spread the word, if you can share the link on other platforms, that would be an immense help to me, and I would really appreciate it. So tell all your friends, share the link, and help me get that much closer to 1,000 subs. But in the meantime, if you do want to help, if you do want to contribute to the channel, if you want to help it remain self-sustaining and completely independent, and it will be, but if you want to have a hand in that, if you want to contribute to that, you can always help me in 3 ways. One, I have my PayPal, which is connected to my primary point of contact in Lord Hellespont V at gmail.com, Lord Hellespont V at gmail.com. I have a Cash App, $ LHVVV, and I also just opened a Patreon account for the express purpose of increasing the quality and quantity of the content on this channel. Any contribution, any consistent contribution there will help me, first and foremost, to introduce 2-hour live streams, additional 2-hour live streams earlier in the day, so I can have something more interactive, something more regular with my audience in the UK, with my audience in continental Europe, and on the East Coast of North America as well. So I would really appreciate it if you would click any of these links that I just posted, but the information is also already there in the crawling ticker and in the video description. Now, finally, in closing, I want to come back to something that Meech shared with me about a very shady supposed business, which calls itself haute luxury or hot luxury, as some might say, and that is basically a sketchy supposed gray market dealer that is God knows where. Apparently, they claim to be based in Florida, but no one quite knows where they actually are. I don't think anyone has seen a storefront, but apparently they set up shop on Facebook groups and similar platforms, and they are sending pretty decent offers to people who are trying to sell their watches. And I think some people have already sent watches to them and have gotten absolutely no money in return. I hope those cases get resolved pretty soon. I hope people get their watches back. I hope people get their possessions back. I'm not gonna make any empty, gestures towards hoping, like, I hope, they will pay those people, because we know that even supposedly established and otherwise trustworthy gray market dealers, a lot of them have huge problems delivering on promises they have made. And in addition to that, of course, this YouTube space is full of filthy flippers who dedicate their entire existence on selling watches for profit. Like the Clueless Watch channel, for example, is one such platform. Be careful, guys. Be careful. It's genuinely a nasty and vicious world out here, and it's a time where some people want to sell their watches because they see a good deal or two, perhaps because they simply need the money, and these people are preying on people's needs, people's difficulties, people's desires, and sometimes they yeah, simply the trust that people have put into others who might seem interested in horology, might feign enthusiasm in horology. And social media, by and large, is full of these vicious people. YouTube especially, but as you see, these fake watch businesses that have set up shop, or shady businesses that have set up shop on social media, on Facebook, on other platforms, are not any better either. But always, guys, if you are doing business with someone sight unseen, with people whose existence, first of all, but also more importantly, whose trustworthiness you can't verify through other means, don't do business with them. Don't do business with your favorite YouTuber just because you think he's a good entertainer, right? Those people are not to be trusted unless you can find multiple references and absolutely vouch for them because they have themselves done business with them. Don't even think about it. Don't even think about it. And you know exactly what channels I have in mind, and you know exactly what businesses I have in mind. And thank you, Joe. Thank you, Big Meech, for turning our attention to these sorts of scammers that claim to share the same world with us, that claim to share the same enthusiasm, same passion for wristwatches with us. They will fall. They will be taken to task, and their time is genuinely running short. Once again, they will pay, and their time is running short, because enough has been enough for running these sorts of scams on the community. And you're not going to get away with it. Not in this space, not in real life. Guys, thank you for being here, and thank you for supporting this channel. I really love the fact that we have such a strong core group of supporters who have been keeping this afloat, who have been keeping this upright, and keeping this platform independent and self-sustaining above all. And to accomplish that, again, you know how to do it. You know it's in the crawling ticker. You know it's in the video description. And you know also that you can do it by clicking on any of these 3 links that I've posted. So I really appreciate you. Thank you for being here with me. It was a late show. I'll make up for it sometime during the week by posting more content, by perhaps running an extra live stream, But in either case, I will be there tomorrow starting at 7:30, and I really look forward to seeing you. Let me read Yasha's message before I sign off. That's at part because the true to form Royal Oak is the three-hander. I completely agree. The simpler, the better. Whereas I think a lot of the other sports watches and a lot of the other watches in this category of sports chic with integrated bracelets actually get better with more complications, whereas Royal Oak is the best in that pure, undisturbed mode of three-hander with dates, extra thin, beautiful. Whilst the overseas undergone so many transformations in relatively short time, it's pretty much anything goes. And when it goes, and when it goes well, and when it's done right, it is quite beautiful. So that's Vacheron Constantin oversexual, ultra thin skeleton in pink gold. It was really something to contemplate. Guys, we'll do again the same thing at the same time tomorrow. We'll be talking watches 7:30. I'll see you soon. Take care.